Oh yeah, I knew you'd be back for more. I could see your little pumpkin eye holes lighting up last time. Now that carbon neutrality has no secret for you anymore, let's see how we can measure our carbon emissions and monitor our carbon footprint. The carbon footprint is the sum of all our direct and indirect carbon emissions coming from our activities and from our partners and providers. Production and consumption of fossil fuels, food, the use of manufactured goods, transportation. By the way, digital activities are responsible for about 4% of the world's carbon emissions, which is more than the aerospace industry itself. Without knowing it, a person video conferencing 20 hours a week over a year emits the equivalent amount as driving a car for 140 kilometers. Hold on a second. To be able to do something, shouldn't we first determine what's wrong and what needs to be fixed? To reduce emissions efficiently, we need to measure these emissions and understand where they're coming from in the first place. Obviously, we need to measure who emits what. But we also need to consider the responsibilities of the different parties with a direct or indirect impact. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol categorizes this impact in scopes. There are 3 scopes of emission, or 3 kinds of emission, a company creates in its own operations. Let's step aside and think of a nuclear family. Parents make decisions for their kids. They are directly responsible for their children's actions. Let's call this a Scope 1 relationship. Now, think of spouses. You are not responsible for their choices and they're not responsible for yours, even if you decide and do things together. Let's call that a Scope 2 relationship. Now, back to our CO2 emissions in the business world. Direct greenhouse gas emissions that occur from activities directly controlled or owned by the company belong to Scope 1, our parent-child relationship. For Orange Business, these are the fossil fuels consumed for heating or cooling our buildings and the fuel for our fleet of vehicles. Indirect emissions due to the purchase of energy consumed by the company's network and buildings are Scope 2, our spouse relationship. For Orange Business, that would be the energy consumed by the electricity used in our office buildings and technical premises and by our fleet of electrical vehicles. Stay with me, we're not done yet. I mentioned 3 scopes and the 3rd scope is a tough one. Back to our family drama. Imagine that you are about to organize your grandfather's 100th birthday party. Ta-da! Of course, you want the extended family to attend. Grandpa's gonna turn 100. In this case, you need to invite your annoying second cousin, great uncle, even the in-laws, so that everyone participates actively in this great celebration. You have to mobilize the entire family ecosystem, which is your Scope 3. Back to the business world. CO2 emissions that are not produced by the company itself belong to Scope 3. For Orange Business, that would be, for example, our employees, business travels and commuting, the goods and services from suppliers, and the use of our products and services by our customers. Many companies only commit to Scope 1 and 2 because they are more controllable and easier to measure. What about Orange Business? At Orange, our objectives to reduce carbon emissions include all 3 scopes, because our Scope 3 represents 80% of our total emissions, which means our Scope 1 and 2 only represent 20%. So ignoring our Scope 3 would be like ignoring the real problem. Within our own activities, the vast majority of emissions are generated by our data centers and the electricity needed to feed the network. Because we are aware of our CO2 impact, we are implementing strategies and methods to reduce our carbon footprint as much as possible. We have set a very ambitious goal compared to other players. Net zero carbon by 2040, with intermediary milestones for 2025. Decreasing Scopes 1 and 2 by 30% compared to 2015, already done by the way. Our Lead the Future strategic plan goes even further. We will reduce all scopes, including Scope 3, by 45% by 2030 compared to 2020. How? For example, with digital solutions that have helped our customers accelerate their cloud migration, with a 33% reduction of waste and a 43% decrease of fine particles emission in 2022. We are also redesigning our data centers to better control the use of air conditioning, lights and equipment, etc. To measure our carbon footprint, Orange Business is working with its entire ecosystem and also developing new tools such as a carbon calculator dedicated to our products and services portfolio. We'll improve our methodologies to monitor and measure our efforts the best we can, because this is the prerequisite to reduce our carbon footprint and be transparent with our customers. This is it for now, and if you want to be responsible pumpkins, go and watch the other episodes. And of course, we will continue to do better for our planet and for you by creating a positive impact.
Orange Business.